and this guy, Chris Cook, has really taken on the mantle.
Fastest record in 4.
The sneaky on the outside. I mean, Cook deserves every right now. Fantastic swimming. Well, we're going to see the start shortly.
Good. Thanks again for joining us.
No problem. Pleasure.
Just for anyone who doesn't know who you are, could you give yourself a little bit of a profile?
Yeah, so my name's Chris Cook. I'm a former Olympic swimmer, double Olympian, and former double Commonwealth champion, and I now have my own businesses. I've got a Learn to Swim business, which I'm the managing director of and the owner, but I also teach in the water. I teach the little ones. I love it. And I'm also a business coach and a mentor and a guest speaker. So I've got quite a few different hats.
Your actual swimming career really started with the bits that get recorded on Wikipedia anyway in about 2003 for the World Cup in Shanghai. But yeah, obviously that's not where it actually starts. So what was it for you that got you into swimming originally?
Oh, it was watching Adrian Morehouse at the age of, I was 9, watching him swim and win a gold medal in Seoul in 1988 at the Olympics. Right. That's what started my journey. That's what started the interest and the intrigue. And then before I knew it, I just started looking for clubs and various bits and pieces. And I met him about 8 months after he'd come back from the games. He was doing some road shows.
Right.
I was doing a road show with Speedo, which was his main sponsor. Met him, met Nick Gillingham as well, who then became a good friend. And before I knew it, I was then just into the training pattern, into the racing and competing, and just grabbed it.
So what age did you start swimming then properly?
It must have been around about 9, 10. That was the age that you can't really compete until you're, I'm sure it was 11 or 12 when we were much younger. I think it's been lowered recently. You can't compete until a certain age. So you can do internal competitions with maybe a team, but you can't kind of go out there and collect points for your team or start doing personal bests until a certain age. So it was just really getting into training and that sort of thing at the early stages.
So I know everybody's experience when they're swimming training as they grow up is different. Like as you get older, the sessions get later and later, and the parents driving you in get a bit more frustrated as you get older. But what was it like for you? What sort of training regime were you on as you were improving?
So the early stages, it was just kind of regular training. It wasn't so intense. It was just technical work, and we'd cover a bit of distance now and again, but it wasn't too laborsome. And then a little bit later down the line, sort of 15, 16 onwards, that's when it starts to become pretty intense. You're talking 30 hours of training a week. That was with weights and gym work and swimming. So early mornings, 4:30, get up, get to the pool for 5 o'clock, get it ready, blast up and down the pool for a couple of hours. You'd get out 7:30, get your breakfast, go to college or university or whatever age you were at. And then you were back again after college or uni doing another 2 hours. And if you could slide in a gym session somewhere along there, you would. And it was probably, I average it out around about 70,000 meters a week, but I have to be honest with you, there were certain months that we would push it up to 100,000 meters a week. Which just, for a sprinter, I was an out and out sprinter. I was like a fish out of water, to coin that phrase. Crazy.
No, because you let me perfectly on there, because you talk about the intensity of the training itself, and something that I always found when I was swimming was it felt very, very competitive, especially as you get older, very competitive training. You feel like everything you're doing, it means so much more, and if you have a bad session, it really puts you on a downer. And those early mornings you wake up, it's like, what a waste if it's not great. But would you agree it's really competitive, the training and swimming?
Yeah, it is. There's two elements to competition. There's the outward competition, which is how you rank against other people. We are obsessed with that as human beings. We are obsessed with it, and I think it clouds a lot of people's judgment. The second element of competition is when you start to realize that it's actually competition with yourself. So that happens in the review and reflection phase of any athlete. They start the process of going, well, hang on a second, that's where I rank against someone else in my club, in the region, in the national rankings and in the world rankings. But where do I compare to where I was last year? And that's when you see a massive gear shift in an athlete, is when they move away from seeing this competition like it's this uncontrollable thing to all of a sudden, hang on a second, I can be a little bit better than I was yesterday. I can do that. And it's those incremental shifts, but it's that mindset of shifting from one element of competition to the other. But yeah, you're absolutely spot on. It's easy to get sucked into, especially when you hear people talking about, oh, there's somebody new on the scene, someone talented, or someone's all of a sudden had a growth spurt at 15 and you're still waiting for yours. And, they're now 6'7". They weren't that last week. It can be, that bit can really cloud your judgment. But that for me is what I used to call the Coronation Street drama. The stuff that's not real. It's just not real. It's just a story that you're making up and you get sucked along with it.
I must admit for myself, I luckily never really came across those big ranking tables online. And I never, until maybe 3 years ago, where a friend of mine who I used to swim with was like, oh yeah, is your record still up there? And I was like, I don't know, I've never actually looked. But those high pressure situations of the training seem to affect a lot of people. And especially when you go to these 2-day events with your club and you're competing over and you've traveled there. The swimming, I find, more than any other sport that I've done, is very, very high intensity, high pressure. And it's like one shot and that's it.
Yeah, I think it lends itself to that. I think there's a couple of things it lends itself to is you can't take anyone to the blocks with you. I always say that to people. You go alone. No matter how much support you've got, you go alone. So it's on you. So there's definitely that pressure. And then there's the pressure of kind of, it does have a subculture. You're right. It does have a subculture of it's all or nothing. It's now or never. It's black and white. You're either fast or you're last. There's no getting around it. And but I always remember my granddad saying when I was a kid, if you can't fit it in a wheelbarrow, it doesn't exist. And I used to think, what is he on about? And he had these funny phrases. And when he was talking about pressure, he's like, pressure is just a mind-created reality. We buy into it and it becomes real. It's like a fear. It's learned over time. So I started playing around with pressure when I was kind of about 17, 18. And that's when things started to change for me. That, just changing the script, changing the rhetoric on the inside of, this is not pressure. This is not real pressure. But you're absolutely right. To come back to what you were saying, it does lend it is a sport that lends itself to that kind of all or nothing, do or die. And I think because it is all on you when you go up to the blocks, take your marks and go. And there's lots of rules. If you remember as a kid, you remember getting disqualified for something simple. I don't know if it happened to you, but it happened to me loads. You come home and people are like, well, I got disqualified for this and I got disqualified for that. And there's so many rules around it that it's a very linear sport.
No, I was going to say, because in terms of keeping to this theme, what was something that I remember very vividly was you'd have your sort of regional competitions where you go to another swimming club and you'd race it, and it'd be a bit of fun. And then the next month you'd go to sort of a national competition, and the next thing you know, you're at Manchester swimming pool and you're swimming 50 meters before that you've never done, and you dive. And I remember the first ever race that I did in the Manchester pool was I think it was 100 backstroke, and and you get to the wall, and for some reason it's like, God, this is lasting forever. I'm still going. I've not done a turn yet. And I came to the wall, and I did the tumble turn, but I maybe just brushed it. Didn't get a push off at all. I'm just floating there, going, "Oh, this is not ideal at all." But it's like, and you felt, God, I've waited there on the side of the pool for about 2 hours, and I missed the wall on the one turn that I had to do. But it felt like you're saying, that the pressure in it is, especially when because I had a lot of friends who were going for those spots in North England teams and GB teams, and it's like the pressure on those people to perform at those events especially is miles higher than anything else.
It is. It's interesting when you go through the journey. You know, I've swum at all levels now, which is crazy when I look back. I think on right from swimming for the Cubs and the Scouts, which was just fun and a daft laugh, and you did a race in your pajamas balancing something on your head, right through to the Olympic final. And I think, where was the most fun? Well, the most fun was definitely when I was younger, racing at Diddy Leagues. I don't know if you did Diddy Leagues, but absolutely brilliant. You collected points for your team. Everybody got a point for racing. You just had to turn up and race, not get disqualified. You collected a point. So everybody was contributing. And then, you know, right through to Olympic finals. But again, the pressure side of it, it is very easy to get sucked into that. But really, in all fairness, it was the same 2 lengths. I just had to swim 2 lengths of the pool as fast as I could. It's what goes on around that you often think to yourself, well, hang on a second, is it real? Is it real or not?
Yeah.
And the stuff around the outside of it is just a few more mums and dads in the audience at the Olympics. That's the way to look at it. A few more mums and dads there.
Do you think though that change from going to those Diddy Leagues to suddenly being in a 50-meter pool, do you think that can affect people? Because I know for myself, it was sort of like, just like, oh, I'm in a big pool. But for a lot of people, it's like, God, this is a bit more serious now.
Yeah, there was moments like that. There definitely was. There was lots of moments where, you know, I remember I was going to the trials, the Olympic trials in 2004. It's a good chance for me to make the team, but I'd never made a big team then. So my first team was the European Champs, big team, 2003. And the second one was the Olympics the very next year.
Yeah.
So I was going with an outside chance, but I was going with a really good outside chance, if you like. So I went to the trials and I got through the heats into the semi-final. And about 6 weeks before the trials, I'd gone from a 2:15 in 200 breast right down to 2:12. So I'd gone the entry time as well. I'd done the entry time, and then all of a sudden I started to feel the pressure of, well, I've done the time, so there's no reason why I can't do it. So I started to feel that kind of build up. Then the second thing that happened when I was at the trials, I went through the heats into the semi-final. The swimming club decided to put a bus on of kids to come down to see us from the club. So I turned up for my final, and the coach was like, oh, by the way, don't look up there, but everybody from the clubs. And as I looked up, there was just this row of like tens of kids just up there, just like shouting, had Newcastle Swimming Club flags and T-shirts on. They were like, had a big banner saying "Go Cookie," and I was like, oh my God, oh my God, I've got to race, and I don't want to let people down. So that was a real big challenge. But looking back now, I just think it's just a test of character. It's a test to see how much do you want it, and how focused can you possibly be? How focused can you possibly stay? And again, I walked up the blocks. All right, it was 4 lengths of the pool that time, but I had to walk up to the blocks and just stay focused on 4 lengths. What have I been training for? My body's ready. The only thing that can mess it up now is me looking in a different direction. And that's what you get. You get challenged with it. Every level brings a new devil.
And you've mentioned it there, the 2003, when you first got into the team. What was that moment like that you knew you were making that squad?
Do you know what? It was a little bit. It was an interesting mix for me, because I was in amongst maybe 5 or 6 breaststroke swimmers at the time who were all within the top 25 in the world. So effectively, a couple of years before that, I was hitting times that were pretty impressive, but I was sat at home watching the world champs or the European champs roll by, thinking, well, I'm good enough to be in that final. I'm fast enough. But 2 of the Brits were ahead, or 4 or 5 other British swimmers were ahead, so you just don't get to go. When I did eventually make the team, the one thing I didn't plan for or just didn't think about was when I made the team, because I'd been fighting against people at home who were all world class, I was in contention or really close to medals. So as soon as I got the Europeans, I was within finals. I got the world champs, I was in finals. So making that team was definitely confirmation that I'm good enough to be here. But the struggle to get there was the big hurdle. That was the big thing to get over. Once I got over it, actually the lovely thing on the other side was I wasn't just making my way up a rankings. I was actually bang right into the top 5, 10 in the world. Which was just bizarre. So I'd go to the Bucks, it's now called, but at the time it was called BUSA, which is the British Universities Sports Association. I'd go to Bucks events and it would be a world-class lineup. There'd be 3 or 4 people who were in the top 15 in the world in a student, all students, but we were all in the top 10, 15 in the world, which is just madness. Every time we raced in the UK, we were racing each other in a world-class field. So I wonder how much of that really contributed to the kind of mental side. Every time you stand up, you're racing an international race effectively, even if it is just Leeds Christmas cracker meet. It's a world-class event.
But like you said there, the getting over that hurdle of the training, does it almost feel like a massive weight off your shoulders to know, thank God, all of those hours, those hundreds of thousands of meters were worth it?
Yeah, there's 2 things for me. I think there's one thing making the team. There's definitely a relief and a wow, thank God it's been worth it. But the nature of the beast, you're always looking for the next thing. A competitor is always looking for the next. If they won a gold medal, they'd want a gold medal with a world record. If they won 1 gold medal with 1 world record, they'd want 2 with 2 world records. It never stops. It never stops. So you've got to be mindful of that. But the second thing is the person you become in the pursuit of your goals is the absolute gem. That's the thing. And I've left the sport, I've left it 10 plus years ago now. The thing I'm most proud of is the person I become in the pursuit of my goals. It's the character that I was able to kind of scaffold through the challenges. And it's that, regardless of whether I made the team or not, you take that everywhere. So for anybody who's kind of nearly made it and not quite, and they're feeling downhearted about themselves, really need to ask themselves, who am I now that I'm proud of that I wasn't 6 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago when I started this journey? And that's a process that I went through when I was transitioning out of sport, because it was tough. It wasn't easy. And I saw myself as a failure when I left swimming. I'd failed to get a gold medal. I'd failed to get a medal at all. I'd failed to get into the Olympic individual final. And it wasn't until I started to reflect back and ask myself, who am I now that I'm proud of, that I thought, do you know what? This whole process has led me to this position now. And I'm really, really proud. So there's 2 things in it for me. There is that relief of making the team, but there's also that double win that when I look at who I am, I feel really proud. And that's through the sport. That is through sport.
And like you said, you're always looking for that next step, if you want a gold, to get another gold, etc. And it was very, very quickly early on that you became the first British man to break a minute for 100 breaststroke. So what was that an aim for you? Were you targeting that minute?
Yeah, at the age of 14, I sat down with my coach. I didn't break it until I was 29 or 28, just before my 29th birthday. I sat down with my coach at the time, called Ken Nesworthy, and we were talking about the minute barrier being broken. It wasn't broken back then. Everyone was peppering around it pretty close. It was about 3 years afterwards it got broken. I sat down and we worked out what would it take to break a minute in 4 lengths of this pool. So we sat in a 25-meter pool, and I did it front crawl first, dead easy. Then we broke it down into breaststroke. So I did 1 length, stopped. Coach stopped the watch, got out, had a little rest, did another length, and we did 4 lengths, and we added it up, and it come out as under the minute. The next challenge was, well, how do we do it with turns, with fatigue, all as one? So at the age of 14, we were already working out, well, how do we do it it's going to happen. It is going to happen. It was almost talked about like it was this inevitable thing that was going to happen. It was just about piecing it all together. So we chunked it right down into its easiest possible chunks, and then we built it up from there. But nobody told us it was going to take sort of 14 years to do. 14 years to do. But that often things like that are big and seem unachievable do take that sort of timeline. But yeah, the feeling of breaking the minute was just phenomenal. Touching the wall, knowing that it was doable, I knew it was in us. And interestingly, in 2006, when I won the Commonwealth Games, in the semi-final, I decided to just swim through that. I didn't really want to put myself into number one position into the final. So I decided to just ease off the gas in the last sort of 20 meters, went through, won the heats, won the semi-final, put myself into first position. I wanted to be in around about third. Anyway, I look back at that particular race, that semi-final, and that was the moment that I realized I had a 59 point in me right there and then. It didn't come out for another 2 years, but I realized I had it in me there and then because I'd swum the race so easy. I was barely out of breath. It was crazy. And I'm sure you've had races like that before, Cameron, where you've come out and it's not felt half as hard, but it's been twice as fast. It's almost like you've allowed yourself to take a handbrake off. And that was one of those races. There was a few in there, but that was the one race I remember thinking, oh, I had a 59 in me there. I could have done that.
It's interesting you say that, actually, because I always try and describe it to people. That there is a certain sweet spot in swimming, I find, where you hit it and it's like you're just gliding and you're not using any effort. And it's actually fast. Yeah, it's just faster than anything you've done before.
Absolutely.
And you've mentioned 2006 there, and that would probably be, you'd say, your pinnacle. The double gold and the silver in the medley. And what was that like, that whole experience of going to Melbourne, Australia?
It was amazing. It was amazing. I was so focused. I changed a little bit about my training regime about 2 years before that. That was starting to work. I'd had the confidence of going to an Olympics, standing in the semi-final, so it was a bit like no big deal. I'd gone to the World Championships the year before and finished 4th and 5th in the 50 and the 100, and it was the fastest men's 100 meters breaststroke in world swimming history at that point. So I was thinking, hang on a second, I'm one of the fastest in the world ranked. I've been in one of the fastest finals. So I went into the Commonwealth Games just ready. And it was one of those moments, I've read lots of books on people and they've said, I didn't go to a country to win a medal. I went there to pick it up. All the work was done before. And I felt that. I felt that in Melbourne. I felt like I was going there. No disrespect to anybody else. There's still lots of work to do. But I felt like I was going there to pick up something that I kind of put in the bag months, if not years before. And I remember a couple of my competitors just saying to us, afterwards when we were chatting, you were unshakable then. So a couple of things springs from that is, well, I must have been shown that I was strong. But the second thing is they must have been trying to shake us in order to thought I was unshakable. So I didn't even recognize what they were doing. So I must have been just so focused on exactly what I needed to do. So yeah, that feeling of, and once I'd won the 100 was the big one. I could have just come home then, really, to be fair. That's what I went for. But obviously 2 days later, won the 50, and I just knew. Like you said, I was in that flow state. I was in that state of flow of, I can't do anything wrong. The disappointing one was probably the medley relay, the winning silver, because winning gold it's addictive, really addictive. And I don't think I've opened that silver medal box, I think maybe 4 times since I got it. Wow. Which is crazy because it's getting on for sort of 14, 15 years now. I've barely opened it yet. The gold one, I trot around talking about that. That's what I do for a living. That's part of my motivational speech to colleges, universities, businesses, and schools. But yeah, that silver medal is probably a moment that I look and think, we could have done more as well. I know we could have done, but that's just the way it is.
And something I've noticed as well from speaking to a lot of people is when you reach that pinnacle, there's a lot of time afterwards that athletes will go through a phase of not quite depression, but you sort of like, how am I ever going to get to that state again where I'm that good, that happy? Did you go through a stage like that?
Yeah, a little bit. 2007 was a tricky year. I think, I don't know what went wrong with training that year. Something went wrong in training. I don't know whether I should have, looking back, I think I maybe should have just taken a year, not a year off as such, just a year training, not competing, just maybe a couple of competitions local, nothing major, but I thought I should go to the Worlds. And once you think I should do something, you know it's someone else's idea. You know, there's an element of someone's press ganging you to do it. So, yeah, I do think I was suffering from I've been on a high, how do I get back there? And training just didn't really cut it, you know.
Yeah.
No competitions were cutting it, nothing was doing it. So I think you're right there. I think that probably, I did feel like that, a little bit like, oh, I want to be back there. It's such a long time to get back there. But it is an addiction. Winning is an addiction. There's no getting around it.
And something else I always wanted to know as well, outside of the actual competition itself, you've been to the Commonwealth Games, you've been to the Olympics, and what is the atmosphere like amongst the athletes? Because you're walking around with your teammates and your other athletes, and it's sort of this surreal thing where you're in your own little bubble of other people, these superstars of sport, and it's like, what's really going on? I can't really begin to imagine what it's like.
It's interesting. The Olympic village and the you know, any sort of athlete village is very different from a world champs or a European champs. So, for example, a European and a world champs, you would be in a hotel somewhere. You might share that hotel with, I don't know, the Swedish team or the German team. Chances are you don't. You're all in your own different hotels around the city, and then you see each other on the poolside, and that's it. So you've almost got your own little hotel as a team within your team. So it's very manageable and controllable. At an Olympics or a Commonwealth, you're in a village, so you're in this penned off area, which is eventually gets sold off for housing or office space. But you're in there, and it's just made up into rooms and accommodation. Inside there is like 10,500 of the world's best sports stars. But it's the spin-offs which happen from it. You know, I remember watching people like Pele just wandering through the village, just walking past, like no one's bothering him. He's just wandering through. He's with a couple of delegates, just pointing at things, going, "Oh, isn't that good? Isn't that good?" I was like, "There's Pele." And then the Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal having lunch together in the village, just sitting chatting, and I was like, "What is going on?" Just every day is a pinch yourself experience, and you see and meet some of the, you know, Kobe Bryant. I remember having a conversation with him and two of his other teammates on a park bench just in the village, just chatting about what the day is like. And it is bizarre. So it's 3 weeks of your life that is a little bit pinch yourself, and it's that you've got to compete when there's a bit of a festival going on, there's a bit of a Mardi Gras happening. Coupled with the fact that once medals start rolling in, you know, some sports start switching off. So once they're finished, early doors, you've still got 2 weeks of the competition left. You're watching athletes go out and party and enjoying themselves. You've got to try and refocus and regather your focus back on what the job is. Luckily, swimming's first up, pretty much first up. So we never go to the opening ceremony or anything like that.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of standing around in the opening ceremony. So I would say there's a good 3 to 5 hours of stood walking through crowds, a little bit like what's trying to get into a stadium where, you know, another 200,000 people are already in, you know, trying to get in. So we never went to an open ceremony. You know, it's a bit sad, really, but we accepted that because we were swimming the very next day. So you could just ruin your preparation by just ruining your legs, basically.
And interestingly enough, how does those 2 gold medals you win in Melbourne, how do they stack up against becoming Northeast Personality of the Year that same year?
Oh, that's a lovely spin off. That it was really nice. You know, I am the Northeast born and bred through and through, and to be acknowledged. You know, we've had some great sports people in the region as well. You know, look like people who were up against it, Alan Shearer, Johnny Wilkinson, people like that. It were just absolute heroes. They're fantastic people and the fantastic sports people. You know, to win it that year when there was a lot going on as well, I didn't think I'd had a chance. I'll be honest with you, didn't think I had a chance. But yeah, no, it was a nice little spin off. All of that, it is. I never went to an awards ceremony to pick it up.
All right.
No, I was too busy training. I was too focused, and I know that must have upset some people. But at the end of the day, I wasn't there to get awards. I was there to swim 2 lengths of the pool as fast as I could, and that's the thing I would always remember. All of the evening dues, the speaking engagements, they can all come later down the line, and they have. You know, I've spent the last 10, 15 years doing it.
Yeah.
Once you're finished, there's plenty of time to do all of that stuff. It's easy to get sucked in, though. It is very, very easy to get sucked into that.
And then, I imagine since you've stopped competing swimming and you've not taken your eye off of it, I'd imagine, and it's where do you see British swimming going next? Because I was shocked to look back at our record in the Olympics, especially. And we've only won 3 gold medals since like 1992, and that sort of blew my mind really, because it was the last Olympics you competed at was the most successful we'd been in 100 years or something.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you try and improve that what we're doing different to other countries?
I think now we're accepting that there are different ways to train. I think, you know, we used to go on big training camps where sprint and long distance were pretty much doing the same thing, give or take a little tweak or two. Now I'm starting to see swimming changing. I'm on the outside now, so I can't speak firsthand, but I am starting to see other training regimes, other training patterns. There's definitely more of a push for land work, which I remember going on training camps as a sprinter, and the pool was all sorted. We had a fantastic pool, but the gym facilities, I was training in a school. Like, oh my God, this is for like, no disrespect, but it was for like 12, 13, 14-year-old boys and girls to get a little bit stronger. And I was looking for ways in which I could make the weights heavier, and it was just ridiculous. So we've definitely become wiser at the preparation side in terms of what we offer athletes in training. And I think as well, there's not this prescriptive, you must do, you have to do now. I think people are starting to broaden the search for other ways to train, and I think that's definitely having a massive impact, and having the confidence to go out there and do it. You know, Adam Peaty isn't just doing what he's doing just from the water. There's other things he's doing. He's been really smart about it. He's looked at his training in a full 360, but he's got that support around him. He's got a coach with that imagination, and Mel, who is prepared to go out on a limb and do something a bit different. Bring those two things together, those two people together, you've got something immensely powerful, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it. He's unstoppable.
Isn't he?
Oh, he's just fab, man. And just the way he conducts himself, the way the pair of them conduct themselves is really, it's amazing. And it makes me feel proud to be British. They make me feel proud to be British. But yeah, going back to your question, I think we definitely have evolved. We've definitely changed the way we train and approach. And it's needed someone like Adam to come through, win a gold medal, and he's going to win next year as well. I have every faith. To maybe make people just think, do you know what, it is doable. It is doable. What he's doing is what I can do as well. And that carries such a weight as well.
And you hear this phrase a lot from athletes after they get interviewed and after an event, and you hear the phrase, you've worked for it for 4 years. Now, working up to an Olympics, and I'm going to lead on to the lockdown situation, it's how strict are those schedules? Before, like, are you trying to hit a peak just before you go to an Olympics? Is that the idea?
Well, yeah. So not necessarily a peak. Your physical peak should happen at the games. What you're looking for is signals and milestones along the way that signify that you are ready. So that's what you do. So the year beforehand, you will try out your what's known as your taper. That's the last phase of training leading into your race. Everyone's got their own individual taper. Some are 6 weeks long, some are 6 days long, some are 2 or 3 days long. It's all individual. What you're trying to do is reduce the amount of workload that you're doing to the point that you still feel fit and you're not losing fitness, but that you're gaining recovery and rest ready so that your muscles, your body, your nerves, everything's all firing on all cylinders when it comes to that race. Often you can miss that tip, what I call miss the taper. So in Beijing, for example, for my individual event, I missed my taper by about 3 or 4 days. 3 or 4 days after my individual, that's when I felt really good and I started to get better and better. So I got the taper wrong. I definitely know that. And it was just a few tweaks and changes in there. The last race that I did was the Olympic final, and I just felt amazing. I felt absolutely amazing. And I knew there and then that I just got that timeline a little bit out. But that's just the way it goes. Every year you train up to an Olympics, you are testing out that methodology, if you like. You're testing out kind of, does this work? Does that work? Is this going to work next year? So you've always got your eye on kind of the 4-year plan, or in many cases, 8-year plan.
But in that respect, knowing what we know now in the situation that we're in, what will those, if it was yourself, going back to when you were preparing for an Olympics, what situation are you in now where it's been postponed and instead of being 4 months away, it's 16 months away?
Yeah.
It must be, the schedules must go berserk.
Absolutely. I think there's going to be a lot of considerations. Age will be a consideration for some people. It would have fallen perfect. If it was Beijing for me, I would have been then over 30, which would have been a massive consideration. I would have gone into my 30s. That might have had a psychological effect on how I raced. You just don't know. I definitely know once I was done, I was done. I was physically, mentally, emotionally just done. I was ready to move on. So another year of that for me, coming towards the twilight years of my career, I don't know if I would have held up. I have no idea. It's hard to say, but it's definitely, it will put people in different positions depending on their age, their maturity. I'm mentoring a swimmer online. So I meet with that person. I've done for about 2 years, meet with that person online. I've got a few athletes that I work with. He in particular said to me this time last year, he said, "Oh, if only the Olympics were just another year away, as in 2021. And I said to him on a call on Monday, I said, "You might got your wish here, mate. You've got your wish here," because it's playing into his hands. He's got a couple of competitors that it's probably not playing into their hands. They could do with the Olympics being now, because he's not quite ready. But in a year's time, I've got a funny feeling he's going to be a cheeky outsider. So it's going to be really interesting to see how people respond. And I always talk about the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is normally an emotional thing. It's normally quite quick and quite boom, and the goal kicks off. A response is normally thoughtful. It's when you it's when you really put your skills in line and you make sure you've got everything in ready to go, and you think it through and you work out, you strategize your next move. So it's going to be interesting to see how people respond. I still think people will be reacting. Bearing in mind they're not allowed in the water, or if they are, they're probably doing it in secret, quietly. I don't know. I haven't heard anything. But I can imagine some people will be getting access to water somehow. But the vast majority of athletes in swimming will not be touching water. That's going to be an interesting concept in its own.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I saw a picture only about, I think it was last week, of American Ryan Murphy, and he's got an inflatable pool in his back garden, just so you know, a 2 meter long one, and he's been basically being winched into it so he can continue to swim. And you've mentioned there that you're coaching someone now. What is it you're telling them to do? Because as you said, they can't use a pool.
Yeah, so we're looking for other gains. So where are the other gains? So a couple of the questions we've been asking is, this is not a situation where we're dealing with pressure. We're dealing with adversity. That's the second part of what I believe mental toughness is about. Mental toughness, firstly, is about dealing with pressure and handling it and turning it to your advantage. How can we spin it? Second part of it is, how do we get through and work through adversity and come out the other side stronger? So the one question I've been asking is, how do we emerge stronger? Everything that I ask this athlete to get involved in is about him coming out the other end stronger in some way, shape, or form. So, for example, every athlete, and I'm sure you were the same when you were swimming, maybe had aspects of their stroke, or maybe injuries that you were carrying, niggles that you were carrying, and we kind of push through them. But this is a time now to maybe fix them. We've got the time. They've got the time to fix them. And generally speaking, most of injuries are fixed on dry land with some sort of core stability work or some sort of physiotherapy help. Well, that can be done in abundance now. We've got all the time in the world. So it's about going back over the performance and looking from a slightly different angle. So choosing a different lens is another question I ask of the athletes. Can we choose a different lens? We haven't got the water now. There's no way you can get in the water. What else can we do? And the last thing I go through with them is when you go through an adverse situation, there's a big long can't do list and it grows. So if you snap a tendon, there's a big long list. Your body tells you, I can't do this, I can't do that. You then reaffirm it by going, yeah, that's really, really painful and I can't do that. So the can't do list grows. The trick in any adverse situation is to shift on the other side and start to increase the can do list. That's very, very hard to see. Even you just have to look for those tiny glimmers. And our job is therefore to switch to that list and grow it every day, just by one, or reaffirm the first one and the second and the third until the fourth one appears. So there's lots of parts of the approach to how we train that we can work through. In fact, it's opened up so many opportunities. It just needs the athlete to be willing to see it. But like I said, a lot of them are still in that emotive reactive stage. And then what often happens is they'll just get stuck into anything, do a program and go, well, why the heck am I doing this? Get frustrated and not do it. That's what'll happen.
And now I know, as you know, I was once a high school kid myself, and we had motivational speakers come to the school all the time, and you can't just go in there and you show your medals and be, now you're inspired, this is what you're working towards. So when you go to these colleges and high schools and universities, what is the general message you try and get across to these people who might have been like me at say 13, 14, going, I am not as fast as these people. Yeah, it's just, I'm just trolling it out for the sake of swimming now.
Yeah, I talk about following your true passion. I talk about finding your North Star, finding what it is that you love doing and doing it. I then talk about the risk reward chart, or the scale, if you like. When we take risk, we take those calculated risks. We've got to be prepared to wait for the reward. You know, we're in an age now where everything is super quick. And I always say to people, how many of you get frustrated when your phone doesn't send that message quicker than you thought and you tap on your phone? You know, I was brought up in an era where we didn't have that technology. It was starting to come in. We didn't have it. So some things we had to wait for. So patience is something that I do feel. Patience and balance and moderation are things that have left us in society. They've left us. We don't work on them no more. So being prepared to plant those seeds and allow them to grow and coming back on a daily basis and cultivating them, because other people won't be able to see what you're laying down in your foundation until almost it's too late for them. And then it catches on. You know, those years and years of training all the way through school, people used to look and think, what is wrong with him? Why is he turning up to training? He's not getting anywhere. I wasn't getting anywhere. I wasn't coming back to school with all these medals and going, hey, isn't it worth it? Yeah. It took until I was out of sight of those people another 10, 15 years before I started to see it. Then they came back going, oh my God, wasn't it worth it? So being prepared for that short-term pain for the long-term gain, it's an age-old saying, but it's absolutely fundamental and true. That hard work that you lay down doesn't get lost. You might think it does just because you lose a couple of things. It doesn't get lost. You've got it in the locker. So for example, for you, you know, I gave you a compliment at the start of the call, because the way you wrote your request to me, the way you conducted yourself, I thought, this is a really nice guy here. You've learned that from your past. It's not just something that just happened now. So all those moments when you got up early and you were swimming, that's leading towards moments that you are the person you are now. It's not been lost. It's in you still. It's just the way we look at it. So I talk about that, and then I talk about the magic of following your dream and following your heart and not being frightened to be different. You know, I'm different. I was different. I was different at school. I'm different. I don't always get on with everyone I meet. I try to, but you know, I'm not here just to be liked. I'd like to be liked, but I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to put my stamp on the world. There's a reason I've got a fingerprint that's different to anybody else's. So my last point is always about being authentic and just being you.
You've been absolutely brilliant for all the questions I'm about to ask. And that finally, I wanted to know, you've done so much with the country and Team GB. When you look back now, what was your favourite moment of being that athlete? Or favourite moments?
Oh yeah, I've got so many. My ultimate favourite moment was definitely standing in the Olympic final, looking out, thinking, this is awesome. It was just amazing. You know, Michael Phelps won his 8th gold medal 2 lanes away. I was in the same race with the rest of the British team, and it was just a phenomenal experience. And I remember coming out the pool, turning disappointment 4 days before into a success for myself, and not an outward success. It didn't reach the papers, didn't hit the papers or anything, but it was a success for me. That was a personal thing. In 4 days, I used all the skills I had to turn that around. But the proudest moment, another proud moment, is just watching other people respond to the words that I say now about the career I had. You know, I receive letters on a weekly basis of people just saying, I'm doing this now. You spoke at my school 8 years ago and I'm now this. And I'm like, oh my God, these were kids at the time. Now they're young adults doing X, Y, and Z. And this guy thinks it was me who's done it. I haven't done anything. I just come into school and I was just bumping my gums about something I feel passionate about. But if people want to take those words and add it to their own life, it's a double win for me. So yeah, that for me would be the proudest, one of the proudest things.
That's it. Thanks so much for joining us, Chris. I feel like getting back into swimming myself now. I've been inspired to go back in once the pools reopen again. So, but no, yeah, cool. It's absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much for helping me out, mate.
Oh, thank you. You've been an absolute pleasure, and well done. And good luck with everything you're doing.
I will do, and good luck with your training your athlete as well. I'm sure it'll go. I'm sure it'll go very well over the next year. You've got free.
Definitely. Thanks very much, Cameron.
But no, thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again soon. See you.
All right. Take care. See you later.